In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. Then he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness night. And evening passed, and morning came, marking the first day. Then God said, "Let there be a space between the waters, to separate the waters of the heavens from the waters of the earth." And that is what happened. God made this space to separate the waters of the earth from the waters of the heavens. God called the space sky. And evening passed, and morning came, marking the second day. Then God said, "Let the waters beneath the sky flow together into one place, so dry ground may appear." And that is what happened. God called the dry ground land, and the waters seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land sprout with vegetation, every sort of seed-bearing plant, and trees that grow seed-bearing fruit. These seeds will then produce the kinds of plants and trees from which they came." And that is what happened. The land produced vegetation, all sorts of seed-bearing plants and trees with seed-bearing fruit. Their seeds produced plants and trees of the same kind, and God saw that it was good. And evening passed, and morning came, marking the third day. Then God said, "Let lights appear in the sky to separate the day from the night. Let them be signs to mark the seasons, days, and years. Let these lights in the sky shine down on the earth." And that is what happened. God made two great lights, the larger one to govern the day and the smaller one to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set these lights in the sky to light the earth, to govern the day and night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And evening passed, and morning came, marking the fourth day. Then God said, "Let the waters swarm with fish and other life. Let the skies be filled with birds of every kind." So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that scurries and swarms in the water, and every sort of bird, each producing offspring of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply. Let the fish fill the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." And evening passed, and morning came, marking the fifth day. Then God said, "Let the earth produce every sort of animal, each producing offspring of the same kind, livestock, small animals that scurry along the ground, and wild animals." And that is what happened. God made all sorts of wild animals, livestock, and small animals, each able to produce offspring of the same kind. And God saw that it was good.
Hey everyone, glad you could be joining us today as we continue on in our series, The Big Story. And I want to start with another question for you, which is, how do you determine someone's worth? No, I don't mean in general. I'm asking you, how do you determine someone's worth? And I know, you're probably a good church-going kind of person, and of course you don't evaluate people's worth. Well, yeah, you do. Of course you do. We all do. And we judge people's worth based on kind of different criteria depending. Maybe we judge a person's worth based on their appearance, which is why, the Kardashians have a reality show and no one has shown up to give me a contract yet. You see, the other day I noticed that one of my neighbors was moving in, and I saw 3 shiny black pickup trucks pull up with these young burly men, all loaded up trucks, right, all ready to move. And I thought, oh, this guy's got some connections. And then I saw who was moving in, and it was this beautiful young woman. And I thought, I wonder if she looked differently if she would get that same amount of help. Or we may evaluate people's worth based on their talent, which is why we love musicians and artists and actors, and why a lock of Elvis's hair will go for $115,000, or Marilyn Monroe's Happy Birthday Mr. President dress went for $1.2 million, or why Mark McGwire's 70th home run baseball from 1998 went for a cool $3 million. We love people with talent. We value people with talent. Maybe we evaluate people's worth based on our relationship with them. Now, let me give you this scenario in case you don't think this is true. If you were going back into a burning building and you had the choice to rescue either your beloved pet or a perfect stranger, and you could only take one, which would you take? Oh, no. Be honest with yourself now. It's just you and me here. It's just us. Who would you want to take? See how relationship plays a difference in value? Or maybe we evaluate people's worth based on how much they produce. You know, we may value the person who's checking out our groceries more than the person who's begging for change at the front of the grocery store. Why? Because the grocery store clerk is producing something. They are contributing to society, which, by the way, is the way the Nazis evaluated people's value in concentration camps. And this is how they determined whether someone would live or die, whether they could produce, whether they could work or not. Amazing, eh? We are continuing on in the big story, which is this grand narrative that God tells us. And it's kind of not in order. It's sort of spread out all over the place about God's interactions with humans. And what you believe about this story greatly determines how valuable you think you are. That's right. How about the Greek philosopher Aristotle? He said that he had a way of determining value between human beings. He said those who are the most rational, those are the most valuable. And the most irrational, yeah, they should be slaves. That's how he determined the worth of humans. How about Carl Becker, who said humans are little more than a chance deposit on the surface of the world, carelessly thrown up between two ice ages by the same forces that rust iron and ripen corn. Oh, don't you feel valuable? We're not done yet. What about the late scientist Stephen Hawking, who said the human race is just a chemical scum on a moderate-sized planet? Chemical scum. Wow. So are human beings worth anything? And if they are, who is worth the most? How do you know? For the longest time, L'Oreal Paris had the advertising campaign, because you're worth it. Because you're worth it. But my question is, how do you know you are? How do you know you're worth it? You know, last summer in Campbell River, not that far from Nanaimo, a homeless man was set on fire. And I kind of wonder, if that person had not been homeless, if they'd had a job and a family, would that have happened to them? I wonder. To answer the question of human value, you have to turn to the big story, to begin to unlock this beautiful narrative that God opens up. And remember, this whole series started with the question, why does God care so much about sex? And in order to get to the answer to that question, you have to go back to the beginning. Back to the beginning. And this is what I want to focus on, Genesis 1:26 to 28. It says this, "Then God said, 'Let us make human beings in our image to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock and the wild animals on the earth, and the small animals that scurry along the ground.' So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and govern it. Reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground." To me, this is one of the most important sections in the Bible. It tells us three key aspects of humanity that are crucial to keep in mind in order to understand the rest of the big story. And here's the first thing. Humans are supreme. Humans are supreme. I might have already lost you. This is not a very popular idea amongst Vancouver Islanders. And often the idea that humans are supreme has been used to abuse the earth. But in order to counter that, some react in all the way to the other side, where they say, they take kind of a pantheistic view that we looked at last week, which is all is divine. All are equal. All life is the same, has equal value amongst all. And you know what? Between abusing the earth and all life is equal, Bible writers take neither of those approaches. I was reading a story not that long ago by Johann Hari called "Chasing the Scream, the First and Last Days of the War on Drugs." And he talked about in the late 90s when scores and scores of Vancouverites were dying from drug overdoses. He said people didn't care. What they really poured out their grief over was when Finna the killer whale in the Vancouver Aquarium died. He described it as Princess Diana grief. But drug addicts, no one cared. And yet humans are unique. Humans are unique. And I'll just give you a little idea of what makes humans unique. Humans are unique because they have the ability to determine right from wrong. They have a conscience, which is why no one charges a cheetah with first-degree murder for gruesomely taking down a gazelle, in Africa. We don't expect the cheetah to know right from wrong. Humans are unique because they have an awareness of mortality and a concern about what lies beyond death. Humans are unique because they hunger for hope and for purpose. And they have a compulsion to discover and create and analyze. Humans are unique because they recognize beauty and truth and logic and absolutes. Humans are unique because they have a propensity to worship and communicate with deity. Humans are unique because they are self-aware and communicate that self-awareness in language, both spoken and written. Humans are unique because they develop art and create. And all of this is accounted for by human supremacy, by being made in the image of God, which is part of the big story. In short, humans have no equal on earth. Second aspect of humanity that we find in this passage is that humans are responsible. They're placed here to work. It's an amazing concept when you think about everyone is born employed. There is a 0% unemployment rate in God's eyes on planet Earth. One of the first things he tells Adam to do is name the animals. He just brings him into that and says, "Go ahead, Adam. Go ahead and name the animals. I could do it, but I'm going to let you do it." He tells human beings to reign over the earth, to govern it. In other words, he made human beings managers, stewards, caretakers. And islanders can generally get behind that idea unless they take the extreme position that says the earth would be better off without humans. And many people believe that. You might believe that. But that's really insulting to those whose job is to manage the environment. Those who are in charge of fisheries, forestry, water system, on and on. They are in the business of governing. There's a reason that you and I, if we own a place, will trim hedges and pull weeds and plant flowers. It's all part of management. It's all part of caretaking the earth. In other words, we find out in the first chapter of the big story that we live here, but we don't own here. We are only caretakers. We are managers. And some would say, well, the Bible just gives you permission to do whatever you want to the earth. Not true. Governing is not a spoiled brat privilege. It is a sobering responsibility. And that whole responsibility is established in the first chapter of the big story. Now, another aspect of humanity is that humans are equal. And if you've read any history, you know that between slavery, between the way women were treated, children have been treated, you know that human beings have not been treated equally. They've been treated as property, as less than. But in the big story, that is not the way things are meant to be. Everyone is equal. All are born in the image of God. Now, what does that mean, being born in the image of God? Well, a lot of people have a lot of theories about that, but here's the really simple way of looking at it. The image of God, the picture of God, we reflect, each of us as humans reflect the beauty and character of God back to each other and to creation itself. And this is the basis of human rights for both men and women of all races in the image of God. And the image of God gives you value apart from whether you are producing or not producing. Apart from whether you are beautiful or you're considered to be less so. Whether you are abled or disabled. Of every race you are valuable because of the image of God. You are valuable whether you were born or unborn, talented or clumsy. You're valuable whether we know you or don't know you, whether we like you or don't like you. You are still valuable. And this is so missing in our society and sadly, even missing in the church. And as we go through this series, I'm going to probably refer back to this chapter, this concept of being made in the image of God, this idea of being equal over and over and over. This is something you have to keep in mind in order to understand the rest of the big story. So, what are we? Equal, right? And when it came to race relations, Martin Luther King Jr. picked up on this, and many times in his speeches. I'll just read to you a little bit. He said, "The whole concept of the imago Dei, as it is expressed in Latin, the image of God, is the idea that all men have something within them that God injected. Not that they have substantial unity with God, but that every man has a capacity to have fellowship with God. And this gives him a uniqueness. It gives him worth. It gives him his dignity. And we must never forget this as a nation. There are no gradations in the image of God. Every man from a treble white to a bass black is significant on God's keyboard." I love that. Precisely because every man is made in the image of God. One day we will learn that. We will learn one day that God made us to live together as brothers and to respect the dignity and worth of every man. This is why we must fight segregation with all our non-violent might. Now, in the midst of all this, you might be looking at this, and if you're not a follower of Jesus, maybe you're not even sure there is a God, something about this all is just kind of rubbing you the wrong way. And that's maybe because in the midst of this, I am making an assumption. And I want to be right up front about that assumption. My assumption is that that there not only is a God, but that when God created all things, he did so with great precision, with planning, and with intentionality. This is called teleology. The idea that God had design and purpose in mind. And that is a crucial thing to keep in the back of our minds as we go through the big story that God did not create willy-nilly. He did everything intentionally. He's wanting to communicate. I'm assuming that through how he created the world, that he did so with the idea of wanting free-thinking creatures who could choose his love or reject his love. And even being male and female is part of that story, giving you a little hint of what's coming. Now, teleology. So if you want to, go ahead and impress your friends tomorrow at work. And if they should ask, I hope they ask, what did your pastor talk about yesterday? You can say, he talked about teleology. There will be no follow-up questions. All right, so why did God start with the image of God? Why put that in the very first chapter? Well, he wanted to establish two things immediately for you today. First of all, he wanted you to know that you are valuable. Valuable, in fact, beyond measurable valuable. Not based on what you've done, not based on what color your skin is, not based on what happened to you or whether you are winning at life or whether you are considered to be losing at life. You are precious to God. You are a treasure to God. And we talked about the campaign, Because You're Worth It. And if I thought there was an actual connection between your worth and L'Oreal Paris products, yes, you'd be worth them all because you are extremely valuable to God. And another ad, maybe you're born with it. Maybe it's the image of God. That's what you're born with. Really funny thing. People say advertising doesn't work. I can remember advertising ads from decades ago, but I can't remember for 2 seconds what someone just said their name was. Amazing. Coke is it, by the way. Anyway, moving along. The image of God can't be earned, and it can't be lost. You have it. You are born with it. It's what makes you valuable. Crude, and I want to put it this way, just to show you how this works, because the image of God can be compared to gold. And gold can come in a number of forms. It can come in those, you've probably seen this on TV or movies, it comes in these beautiful, glossy bars, right? Yeah, it's marvelous. It looks so nice. Gold can also come in this misshapen kind of form that doesn't look like anything. And you know what? Pound for pound, they're worth exactly the same. That's what being made in the image of God is. It doesn't matter who you are or what you look like. You are valuable because you are made in the image of God. So you are valuable and you have a purpose. You are called to govern, to rule, to manage, to work, to create, to make this world better. You were designed to reflect the love and mercy and justice and acceptance of God back to creation because you're an image bearer. And when we are fully us, when we are fully bearing the image of God, people will see God in us. They will see his beauty in us. On movies or TV or whatever, when the actor is looking in a mirror and it's angled just towards the camera so the camera can see the actor and the actor can see the camera. Well, we're that mirror. And we are reflecting back God to each other and to creation. That's what being made in his image means. We bear his likeness. So getting to the question, am I valuable? The thing is, right now, I know for a fact, many of you watching this right now don't think you're valuable. You're not already in the very first chapter of the big story. You've got major doubts. Thinking, I'm not sure that that's true. Because you think your value comes from what you are producing. If you could just lead a ministry, if you could serve more of the poor, if you could just evangelize a few more people, then you'd be valuable. Or maybe you're thinking you're not good looking enough, or talented enough, or popular enough. Just listen to what writer and former atheist Lee Strobel said about this very topic. He said, I came to realize that God didn't love me because I made myself valuable through service. On the contrary, I was valuable because I was loved by God. We talked about that last week. I could stop working like a slave to justify myself. I just needed to recognize and celebrate my adoption as God's child. My desire to love and serve God in a healthy way would flow from that. I listened to this quote, I listened to him talk, and it's clear that he spent part of his life trying to prove his worth. And that's exactly where some of you are at right now. You are busy trying to prove you are valuable. And you are fighting, and you are clawing, and you are scraping, and you are worrying, trying to prove to God and to others that you are worth something. And yet God freed you from that very thing in the first chapter of the big story. And if it's true, if this first chapter of the big story is true, you never need to doubt your worth. You never need to doubt your worth. And later on, there's this great turning point in the big story that we'll talk about later, where God himself went to a cross because you were so valuable. What does that say about your worth? What does that say about how we should treat each other who are made in the image of God? Do you believe the big story? Do you believe that you are valuable beyond measure? That others are valuable? All others are valuable beyond measure? And that being made in God's image makes you superior, it makes you responsible, and it makes you equal. You are, in fact, the peak achievement of creation. You are unique. Anglican Bishop Rowan Williams said, the life of the Christian community has as its rationale the task of teaching us this: so ordering our relations that human beings may see themselves as desired, as the occasion of joy. The occasion of joy. Imagine if we lived fully according to our design, fully as image bearers of our Creator, then everyone who leaves our presence would see themselves as an occasion of joy. Every time we get together in our Connect meeting groups, or our Connect group meetings, we would leave feeling like we are occasions of joy. Every time we serve someone, every time we interact with them, they would leave us feeling as an occasion of joy. Imagine what that would do in a church. Imagine what that would do in a community. In the first chapter of the big story, we find out that to God, you are an occasion of joy. You are so valuable to the King. I hope that this truth humbles you and assures you and secures you, enlightens you, and frees you, and leaves you in awe as we begin the big story. Let's pray. Lord, I want to pray for everyone who's watching this, who struggles with their value, and we all do. None of us have this down. We all struggle to believe the very first chapter in your book to us. Lord, I pray for every person who's watching that over the next hours, the next days, more and more, they would see that they are valuable and that they have a purpose on this planet. That you see that to you, every person is an occasion of joy. That every person watching this would believe in their hearts that to you, they are an occasion of joy, that you get great joy out of watching them, out of caring for them, out of hearing from them. Lord, we thank you that you are a God who loves us that deeply, who loves us deeply enough to die on a cross to pay for the debt that we could never pay. And we are grateful. We can't wait to hear what you have to tell us as we open up the rest of the big story. Thank you, God. Amen. That's it. That's all I have for you today. I hope that you continue on in this series. There's so much more to come. I am so excited to bring this series to you, and I hope that you don't miss any of it, because you'll need all the pieces of the puzzle to get to the end. And I look forward to that journey with you. Take care.